This is Scorpio Books, and I am your host, Amber Shannon. Today we're going over what problems we actually see in horror films, where the person has a chance at survival, but isn't very bright and winds up dying because they can't figure out what they did wrong. And I know horror films are supposed to be set up to where almost everybody dies. But the least likely candidate is normally the one that survives. So, what about all the people that took the steps correctly and wound up dying, and somehow this person magically got lucky and lived? That bothers me so much. So, let's start with there's no weapon anywhere, and the killer's coming to get me. First, we're going to set the scene. The person runs into a restaurant kitchen running away from whatever psycho is after them. The person starts yelling and shouting. First off, you should probably be quiet if the person's chasing you, right? Then they proceed to dig through everything and can't find a weapon, even though the entire counter is filled with knives. Like, come on. A knife isn't a weapon? You have the filleting knives and the butcher knives right off the bat in plain open sight. They're in the sink. You have the knives in the butcher block. There's like 3 or 4 of them lining the counter. There's no weapon to be found. Anything and everything's a weapon. If you're not going to grab a knife, what about the pan of hot boiling grease beside you? That would at least stun the killer. Yeah, it might tick him off a little bit, but it's going to give you a chance to run and get away. Then you have the pans. Pots and pans can easily be thrown or used. It's cast iron, it's heavy, and it's going to hurt if it hits somebody. So, the no weapon in the room is not much of an excuse. There's always a weapon. Even if it's a small object, there's a weapon. You have a chance of survival. Now, let's move on to the next one. The next pet peeve is whatever is after them is clearly trying to separate them to kill them off. Okay? But let's make the killer's job easier. Let's say they're walking through the woods and they just watched the couple people that walked away and separated from the group get killed. Let's separate to try and find a way out of the woods. Let's separate because the killer can't go after all of us. What if it's more than one killer? What if it's more than one thing? Yeah. You should always stick together and stick in a group in this problem. You should not at all, for any reason, separate and something like that. To find your way out of the building, to find a way out of the woods, to go get help. At least take someone with you. Like, if it's a group or a 5 to 6 people, there's no reason only one person goes to get help. If there's 5 to 6 people, at least 2 people should go get help. Because otherwise the person you just sent by themselves is going to end up dead anyways. So your help is never coming. Then, the easiest person to spot in a movie that dies first is always somehow winds up being the dumbest person possible, or the most chicken shit person they could have put in the movie. Come on, it's obvious they're not going to make it. The dumbest person normally walks right up to the killer and doesn't realize it. They wind up dead within the first 10 minutes of the movie. Here, this person is covered in blood, holding a machete covered in blood. And the person's just going to walk up and ask what happened. Forget the baddie is laying right in front of the guy. The guy's holding the head in one hand, the machete covered in blood in the other hand. Pretty sure it's obvious on what happened, let's not walk up and ask the person. It's a little clear on what happened. Then the chicken shit. Something screams or yells or howls or something in front of them and they're walking through the middle of the woods and the chicken shit takes off in a dead run in the opposite direction. Yeah, my money's on that person going first. Let's be honest. That person's dying first. It's clear. He just ran off and left the group. The rest of the group's remaining calm and on alert. This person just went with flight instead of fight, or flight instead of remain calm. He's more than likely running into the killer, or the monster, or whatever is after them. Those two are typically the first ones to die. It's plain and simple. First to die. They run off, they walk up to the killer. They're supposed to be hiding. And the killer walks in there, and instead of remaining quiet, they see the killer's feet and they scream. If you're hiding from the killer, you kinda expect the killer to walk in there and go looking for you. It's not a good idea to scream and give away your hiding spot. Is it? Please tell me it's not. Please tell me that if you have someone chasing you, you're not going to scream if you're hiding and give away your hiding spot. And then, another one. There's so many horror films where the person gets locked up in a house or in a cellar. And they think that if they knock the killer down, they can escape. You gotta think they're probably expecting you to try and make a break for it. Like, seriously. If they're going to kidnap you, they're going to take precautions to make sure you don't get away very easily. So, somehow magically getting out of the house and getting to the road, some people would expect to be more cautious, especially when the house is filled with people and they're yelling and screaming through the house, "Help me, save me." The people in the house are probably working with the psycho who just kidnapped you. Right? So, that's another pet peeve. Now, the killer, those all are horrible things to do if you're stuck in a horror film or stuck in a scenario like that. Let's be honest, that's a bad move on anybody's part. But let's use a killer for example. The person kidnaps you and is going to wait to kill you because they want to use you for ransom or something. They use duct tape to hold your hand. Duct tape your hands so you can't run away. And they duct tape you to the chair. Duct tape may seem like it's hard to break, but to be honest, it is not. It is fairly simple to. As long as you don't panic, you can get free. So for them to use duct tape to hold someone hostage, come on. Really? I get it if they use a lot of duct tape, but like, they go around your hands maybe 3 or 4 times. That's the simplest thing to break. Or the super easy, or the super thin rope, and they just have your hands tied, and the person's sitting there like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get free? Forget the fact that the killer walked away and left a knife on the table. Right beside you, and you're not tied to the chair. That's a big problem on both the person who got kidnapped and the deranged psycho in the movies. I've seen so many horror films so many horror films, thrillers, action, where the person is just tied with thin rope. And the killer walks out of the room, or the kidnapper walks out of the room and leaves the knife on a table, does not tie this person down to the chair because they're not going to get up, they're not going to cut their way free, and they're just going to sit there and panic like dummies and wind up getting killed later on in the movie. If you're tied with thin rope, first off, try to break it. Second off, the rate it's taking you to panic, you can get up, walk to the table, grab the knife, cut the rope, and then go after. And then wait for the killer to come back if you're locked in a room. If they're dumb enough to leave the door open, make a break for it, but make sure you take the knife with you, so you have some sort of defense. Like, come on. Then you have the people who are walking to their cars and knowing there's someone following them, and they have the option of pepper spray, a key, or a phone in their bag, and they turn around and threaten to call the cops. That's totally going to terrify somebody, right? Except for a cop's response time, unless it's in your area, takes a few minutes. Those few minutes, the person could already have you kidnapped. So, the better bet is, that pepper spray in your bag? Don't worry about threatening to call the cops. Pretend you don't notice them. Keep walking to the car. They follow you to the car, and then you pull out the pepper spray and you pepper spray them. Don't call the cops in a horror film like that. The cops always take forever in that situation. Now, in real life, you probably should be worried about calling the cops first before you pepper spray somebody. But if your phone's dead and the person's clearly following you, and they follow you to the car and try to push you in the car, then the pepper spray is probably a good idea. But in a horror film, better bet's probably forget about the dead phone and worry about the pepper spray you have in your bag. Seriously, pepper spray might be the best weapon you have between that. So at least the pepper spray's gonna blind them and you can get in the car and drive away. Then you can file a police report, just in case the person comes back and tries to sue you, so they can figure out where you live. Then you have the horror films where I think I just ran over the monster, or I think I ran over the killer, and I think they're dead, and then they get out and walk over to check on him. I'm sorry if I am in a movie and I ran over a monster, and I think it's dead, I'm gonna kick in reverse, run it over again, and kick in and drive away as fast as I possibly can. Horror film and thriller 101. The monster always comes back to life. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Unless it's a zombie and you kill it by taking off its head or shooting it in the head, it's probably coming back to life, and it's gonna be mad. So if you're still there, when it gets up, you're not gonna make it. Every horror film where this has happened has proved it. It typically grabs the person and flies away with them, or drags them off into the woods. Please tell me somebody else sees that. Not just me. Like, honestly. Horror films, yes, they're good, but I think the characters would do a lot better if there were a lot more realistic events, or some characters that used common sense. Like, I'm sorry, my gun ran out of bullets, but instead of using it as a club, I'm going to throw it and run. You just ditched a weapon. It may not have bullets, but you can still use the gun to club the person who's after you. You can still use the gun to bash in the monster's head. Instead, you throw the gun and run and hope to get far enough away that it doesn't get you or doesn't find you. But you only run like 30 yards and then you hide behind a tree. It's going to find you. It's plain and simple. It will find you. I guess that's all for the day. So hit the like button if you liked the video. Hit the subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications.